Dear audience, especially universitas book students wherever you are, we are in Social Economic for the Fisheries Society. Class today, we will discuss on co-management practice to artisanal fisheries. Anthropologists and the message of their work have influenced marine fisheries policy in several ways. First, the emphasis on democratization of policy processes, giving greater voice to fishers and members of fishery-dependent communities. Two, the stronger emphasis on community-level impacts, social and economic impact assessment as meaningful part of management planning. And three, the value of community-based alternative to top-down management. Stakeholder participation, key to fisheries management, was defined as conditional for the development and implementation of legitimate and effective management instruments and procedures, which rapidly shaped the global research agenda. Social research has reflected critically on how stakeholders' participation is organized, how it delivers contributions, and how such processes can be better organized for acceptable outcomes. Not all stakeholders feel represented by their own institutions. In the frame of the growing interest in the ocean, social science has to be activist and scholarship in shedding a light in emerging conflicts between livelihoods and investment in new economies to get profits in the frame of blue economy and blue growth, investments that may produce the privatization of fishing rights, the ocean grabbing by large industries and marine recreational business, and subsidies to large-scale fisheries in detrimental of small-scale fisheries. But also, social science has to provide tools to get profit from opportunities. New approaches to sea through blue economy may provide to those more vulnerable small-scale fisheries, women working in fisheries, and fishing communities. Several authors point out that conflicts between economic sectors at sea are mainly generated where there are poor institutional structures, ineffective surveillance, poor enforcement of policies, lack of inclusive management policies, and well-agreed multi-actor governance systems, but especially where there are weak frameworks to integrate social, bioecological, and economic aspects all together. These are key points to ensure the effectiveness of good practice on social actors' interactions and the prevention of conflicts. It is essential to reorganize and account for the historical rights and the complexity of ways in which social groups and nations understand, appropriate, use, and make rules for their interactions with the ocean. The scenario is multiple. Therefore, it is paramount discerning processes such as existing conflicts among various stakeholders, differential forms of local resource, governance, and knowledge, and the role of resource management and conservation programs in enhancing or diminishing people's economic prospects. Nowadays, marine social science have seen a shifting focus from management to governance, understood as adaptive management. This is considering stakeholders' participation, integrating multi-actor systems that involves not only local communities and government agencies and non-governmental groups, but also scientific managers, NGOs, fishers, and other stakeholders, for example, scuba divers or recreational fishers, in a middle ground approach, nor bottom-up or up-bottom, in an approach that be able to integrate all views. In the new trends of co-management, it is necessary to know the viewpoint of stakeholders, especially the artisanal fishers, regarding the conflict generated from the interaction of different stakeholders. It is important to know really which are the most aggressive fishing activities and or extractive activities, for example, between commercial fishing and recreational fishing. To establish the mutual collaboration between all stakeholders, it is very important, as I have said before, using a middle ground approach. It is important to build up a good communication. This is paramount. Communication mechanisms involving scientists, managers, and stakeholders. Which are the key aspects to take into account in a co-management plan in artisanal fisheries? First, to define what's artisanal fisheries. Then, to broaden fishery research toward the fishing communities, considering fishing as a whole, social, economic, and ecological integrated system. The blue justice, the human rights-based approach to ensure equity and justice to small-scale fisheries. And then the cultural heritage. Artisanal fisheries has cultural value and harmony between people and nature to set the balanced socio-ecological relationship, acting at the local level, but leaving sustainable global footprints, fostering healthy ecosystems and human well-being. To establish the definition of artisanal fishing according to each local context, it's paramount because there's a great diversity in small-scale fisheries around the world. The definition and conception of small-scale fisheries varies between countries. There are countries where artisanal fisheries refers to subsistence, and other countries commercial fisheries, and in other countries small-scale fisheries is used to provide local consumption, and in some other cases the fish, the catches, are exported. Furthermore, in some countries over time, artisanal fishing has had to face up to the changing economic, social, and environmental context in order to maintain the profitability of the sector. This is especially the case in the Mediterranean. The complexity that involves dealing with all these changes without ceasing to be what culturally it is known as artisanal fisher makes ambiguous the line that separates artisanal fishing from large-scale fishing. Going a step further, I would emphasize that small-scale artisanal fisheries include a specific culturally inherited conception of fishing reflected, for example, in fishing techniques, fishing knowledge, and the locally established relationship with the environment, among other aspects. For this reason, not all small-scale fisheries are perceived as artisanal fisheries by small-scale fishing communities, according to the ethnic perspective, I mean, according to the indigenous point of view. The definition of artisanal fisheries has not only to do with a question of scale, but also with a local culture that underlines the difference between small-scale artisanal fisheries and large-scale fisheries, considering the existing broad variety of fishing fleets and gears, size of vessels, fishermen profiles, working hours, and so on. To pay attention to fishing communities for the co-management, it's very important. This is, as I have said, to broaden fishery research toward fishing communities. Sea-land relation is traditionally the pivot of the social organization of fisheries, structured by the division of labor by roles of gender and age. This division distinguishes the production from the social reproduction. Social reproduction refers to family involvement in fisheries, ensuring the workforce that partly ensure to keep the long-term viability of fishing activity. According to this division, production, social reproduction, fisheries have been seen as harvesting activity, focused mainly on vessel as unit of production at sea, so representing the central economic activity of fishing, and usually this is the sphere identified as male space, because the activity is in charge of men. Therefore, ignoring other spheres of fishing activity, like social reproduction, which is paramount for the intergenerational replacement, the workforce, maintenance of the means of production, mending the nets, family business management, or marketing of seafood products, activities which are usually considered as belonging to female space inland, since usually are women in charge of the fishing activities at land. So, whereas traditionally biologists and economists have focused on production, harvesting, social anthropologists claim for a more holistic approach of fishing as a sea-land activity, considering both spheres, sea and land, as a unique arena instead of separated as traditionally considered. The division removes the interconnections between spaces, its hidden female work denies diversity and social class differences, inasmuch not only fishing activities at land, it is performed by women, but usually also by vulnerable social classes and ethnies. The land-sea division strengthens the ideological connection between fishing and harvesting, denying the rights of women as fishers because the activities inland are not considered as part of fishing. Fisheries management has also to take into account the work inland, not only focusing at sea. Global policies that promote the renewal of forms of production under criteria of blue growth has rather favored, through different legal measures, large industrial change to the detriment of small-scale producers and other blue economy, which is often displaced. Blue justice. Blue justice is another aspect we have to take into account in income management. Small-scale fishing rights have been established upon culturally and environmentally defined relationships between humans and nature over many centuries. This is what drives the claims of fishing communities for sea tenure rights. According to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations Agenda, the access of small-scale artisanal fishers to marine resources and seafood markets is one of the priorities which requires to transform governance structures and management systems that have traditionally favored other segments of the fishing fleets, mainly industrial and large-scale fisheries, allegedly more efficient. Achieving access to fishing opportunities and markets will require adjustments in resource governance and fisheries management systems, embracing social justice and equity as key elements of what it has been referred as blue justice. Cultural heritage and values also have effect in management decisions, either implicitly or explicitly. Although fish are often considered as the primary source of livelihood, multiple ecological, socio-cultural, economic components of fishing create value out of such factors, producing the sense of belonging to a community, attachment to the place at sea and at land, for example, at fishing ports, human-nature relationship, shaping identity and sense of fishing culture. The importance of social and cultural context of fishing suggests that fishing is not just an occupation, but also a highly satisfying lifestyle, which defines fishers' identity and produces well-being. Fishing has relevant cultural value, from which fishermen in some countries depend even more than economically. Fishing, it is a cultural relationship with nature rooted on local identities, usually understood by fishers as an activity irreplaceable with whatever other job. There is a need to include in fisheries management not only economic valuation, but also more qualitative evaluation that reveal how place attachments at land and at sea plays a significant role in individuals' and communities' identities, and how this aspect directly can improve our understanding of benefit and well-being, which is an important aspect for the management of seas and oceans. Furthermore, ignoring values may reduce the social acceptability of management activities. The best way to ensure a stakeholder engagement in fisheries management is through values and moral aspects of regulation norms. In the field of fisheries, we must start from a broad vision of the institutions that includes not only the normative aspect but also the mechanisms that intervene in its definition, such as the moral aspect of rules, values, and worldviews. Yes, I refer to cognitive dimension, seascapes. There are the elements that ensure enforced regulations. Managers have to generate policies which are more compatible with fishers' values and which, as a result, may have higher potentials for compliance and cost less to enforce. On the other hand, a major public interest in conserving fishing cultural heritage can benefit socially and economically the fishing communities. For most of fishers, it is important to continue fishing as their main occupation. Maritime cultural heritage is a public good that, if conserved, can slow or prevent the loss of social value and well-being associated with commercial fishing. Cultural heritage can also be used to make fishing profitable, for example, in promoting seafood products. This is by linking seafood products with cultural heritage of fishing and constructing cultural and social discourses associated to local seafood products and certification schemes, as well as eco-labels and brands that certifies that seafood have been fished sustainably from the biological point of view, at the same time according to the cultural heritage of fishing. Another important point in co-management is the harmony between people and nature that can be expressed through the idea of socio-ecological embeddedness. Fishing is embedded in local culture and in a set of social relations with nature. The idea of socio-ecological embeddedness can contribute to the institutionalization of sustainability in fisheries. Socio-ecological embeddedness refers to the systematic interdependencies of socio-economic and biophysical factors which are paramount to the success of sustainable resource management. It refers to fishing as an attitude and an ideology about how to relate to the environment of care and reciprocity, a culturally inherited legacy that implies and acknowledges specific social relations of production, usually family community-based, the use of specific fishing gears that has survived to the present day, namely an attitude that is shaped by a set of principles inherited from their ancestors and which is socio-ecologically embedded. The value of small-scale fishing is that it fortifies a respectful relationship between fishers and the environment, a relationship that is economically and socially beneficial. Nevertheless, it has been assessed the difficulty of operationalize socio-ecological embeddedness as well as to translate it into management measures. We need to take into account all aspects that may have an impact on complex socio-ecological interdependencies. For example, the external aspects that affect the state of resources, such as climate change, and the characteristics of the market. Fisherman is subordinated to a market system that responds to a market demand and market competition. These aspects may make it difficult for small-scale fisheries to be sustainable, which has to cope with these different pressures. In this sense, the socio-ecological embeddedness can produce certain confusions. That is to say, the interaction of social processes marked by pressures like market system with ecological dynamics marked by global change can be not optimal, obviously, due to the external factors and particular ecological situations. Here is how precisely this socio-ecological relationship can lead to confusion or misinterpretations. It is precisely here when we need the biological studies to operationalize properly the socio-ecological relationship. We need a good contextual knowledge of day-to-day fishing of the social context, namely a knowledge relied on social science research and especially in social anthropology, as well as an accurate knowledge of current ecological dynamics and fisheries biology. To summarize, we need to carry out interdisciplinary studies, sociocultural and environmental. We need to produce transdisciplinary research capable to address fisheries realities differently, considering differences and similarities around the world in order to manage locally what produce global footprints. I assented to ethnography as an appropriate method and instrument to capture this socio-environmental reality in all its complexity. I highlight the value of an ethnographic approach when trying to understand the complex set of factors that characterizes the complexity of fisheries. And an ethnographic perspective is based on long-term fieldwork and long-term relationship of trust between researchers and informants that can be valuable in gaining access to marginalized viewpoints within a community. Ethnography considers context in as much it provides more realistic approaches on fisheries matter. So, thank you very much. Dear audience, thank you for your attention. See you in another program. We hope this program will increase your competence in the future. Keep study hard and success. Better?